Right now, a number is telling you what to do. It woke you up this morning. It decides when you eat, when you work, when you're allowed to rest. You obey it without thinking. But for 99% of human history, that number didn't exist. There were no minutes, no hours, no such thing as being late. So, how did humans live before clocks? And what did they have that we lost?
Let's start with the truth. Nobody tells you. The clock did not measure time. The clock invented it. Or at least, it invented the version of time you live inside, the one cut into tiny, equal, countable pieces. For roughly 300,000 years before that, humans had a completely different relationship with the day, and understanding it changes how you see your own. So how did people know when to do anything? The short answer is they read the world. The long answer is way more interesting. For most of human history, time wasn't a number. It was a feeling and a place. The sun came up, and that was morning. The sun sat overhead, and that was midday. Your stomach told you when to eat. Your body told you when to sleep. The seasons told you when to move, when to hunt, when to gather. Time wasn't something separate from life that you measured yourself against. Time was just what was happening. Anthropologists have a name for this. They call it task orientation. You don't do something for an hour, you do it until it's done. You don't cook for 20 minutes, you cook until the food is ready. A task has a natural length, and that length is the only clock you need. Compare that to your life, which runs on the opposite system. Time orientation, where the clock decides when a thing starts and stops, whether it's actually finished or not. Now, some of you are thinking that sounds chaotic. How did anyone coordinate anything without a clock? How did you agree to meet someone? Fair question. And the answer is they used events instead of numbers. You didn't meet at 2 p.m. You met when the sun was over that hill or after the morning hunt or when the tide went out. The world itself was the appointment. It worked because everyone was reading the same sky. Humans also weren't completely blind to time. We just measured it in bigger, looser pieces. Around 3,500 BC, the Egyptians planted tall stone obelisks and watched their shadows crawl across the ground. The first sundials. Around 1500 BC, they built smaller shadow clocks that split daylight into 12 parts. But notice the problem. A sundial only works when the sun is out. On a cloudy day, at night, in the depth of winter, time simply stopped being measurable, and their hours weren't even equal. A daytime hour in summer was longer than a daytime hour in winter, because they just divided whatever daylight they had into the same 12 chunks. Imagine an hour that changes length depending on the season. To them, that was completely normal. To tell time in the dark, the Egyptians and later the Greeks used water clocks, water dripping at a steady rate from one bowl into another, with marks to show how much had passed. And the reason your hour has 60 minutes and your minute has 60 seconds comes from the Babylonians, who counted in a base 60 system thousands of years ago. You are still using their math every time you check the time. You just never knew it. Other cultures got creative. In China, people burned incense sticks marked into sections to measure the hours. And at night, some lit candles notched at even intervals, reading the time by how far the wax had melted down. But every one of these had the same flaw. They measured how much time had passed since you started them. None of them could tell you what time it actually was. That idea, an exact, shared, ongoing time that exists whether you're watching it or not, didn't exist yet. But the real shift, the one that built the world you live in, came from a surprising place: monasteries. Around the 13th century, European monks had a problem. Their entire day was built around prayers that had to happen at exact moments, 7 or 8 times a day, including the middle of the night. Reading a sundial at 3 a.m. is impossible. So they needed a machine that could keep time on its own in the dark without the sun. And somewhere in medieval Europe, they built one: the mechanical clock. Here's a detail most people miss. The word clock comes from the Latin word for bell, clocca. The earliest clocks didn't even have faces or hands. They just rang a bell. Their only job was to tell a human when to ring the bigger bell that told everyone else what to do. And that's the moment everything changed. Once a town had a bell tower, time stopped being personal. It stopped being yours. The bell rang, and the whole town moved at once. You no longer woke when your body was ready. You woke when the bell said so. For the first time, time lived outside your body, up in a tower owned by someone else. For a few hundred years, that was as precise as it got. Then came the part that finished the job, the factory. When the Industrial Revolution arrived, work moved out of the home and the field, and into buildings full of machines. And machines don't care about sunrise. A factory could run day and night, and the owners realized something. If you pay a person for their time, then time is money. Literally. Every minute a worker isn't working is a minute the owner is losing. So they put clocks on the walls, they rang bells to start and stop the day, they invented clocking in and clocking out. The historian E.P. Thompson described how an entire culture was retrained, sometimes by force, to stop thinking in tasks and start thinking in hours, to feel guilty about wasted minutes, to watch the clock. And the final piece fell into place with the railways. Before trains, every town kept its own time, set by its own local noon. The clock in one city could be 10 minutes off from the city down the road, and nobody cared, because nobody could travel fast enough for it to matter. But a train running on a schedule needs every station to agree on what time it is. So in the 1840s, Britain forced every clock in the country onto a single standard time. The United States followed in 1883. For the first time in history, your time and a stranger's time 1,000 miles away were exactly the same. The whole world had been synced to one machine. So let's reconstruct a day before any of this. You wake up with the light, not before it. There's no specific moment you're supposed to start. You begin when you're ready. You work on what needs doing, and you stop when it's done, or when your body's had enough. You eat when you're hungry, not when a number says lunch. When the sun goes down, the day is essentially over, not because a clock told you, but because the light is gone. And then something we've completely lost. You sleep in two pieces with 1 or 2 hours awake in the dark between them. A quiet, wakeful window your ancestors used for thinking, talking, or doing nothing at all. There was no being late. There was no running out of time. There was just the rhythm of the world. And you lived inside it. Here's the part that gets me. Your body still runs on the old system. Deep in your brain, there's a cluster of cells that keeps its own time using light, not numbers. The same internal clock your ancestors lived by for 300,000 years. It still wants to wake with the sun and sleep with the dark. But you override it every single day. You drag yourself out of bed by alarm, sit under artificial light until midnight, and call it normal. We didn't just build a machine to measure time. We built one that overruled the clock we were born with. Think about what the clock actually did. It took something that used to be yours, the natural rhythm of your own day, and moved it outside of you into a number you now obey. Your ancestors asked, "Is it done?" You ask, "How much time do I have?" They lived in the present because there was no other option. You live in a countdown. For 99% of human history, no one was ever late because there was nothing to be late for. Then we built a machine to measure time, and somewhere along the way, it stopped measuring our time and started spending it for us.